Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibhiriritam Kalmashapaham Sravanamangalam Srimadaatatam Bhuvi Grananti Bhurida Jana. So the master with the Brahmo devotees. So his conversation with the Brahmo devotees continues. So Sri Ramakrishna is addressing the Brahmo devotees. Once I said to Vidyasagar, everything else but Brahman has been polluted, as it were, like food untouched by the tongue. In other words, no one has been able to describe what Brahman is. A thing once uttered by the tongue becomes polluted. Vidyasagar, the great Pandit, though he was highly pleased with my remarks. So, here we find Sri Ramakrishna is speaking of the ultimate realization, which cannot be described in words. It is something which is experienceable, but which cannot be described. In some other context, he gives a very nice example. It is just like the testing of clarified butter. You know that the butter has a taste, but can you describe it? You cannot describe it. So it is something like testing the butter. It is something experienceable, but which cannot be expressed through words. So that's the idea which we find that Vidyasagar was highly pleased hearing that remark. Now in this world, one thing we will find, that unless the experience, any experience is shared by two of us, we can never relate our experience through words. It's impossible. That example which we give again and again. Suppose I have tasted mango and I explain the taste of mango to a group of people who have never tasted the mango. However, I may use words. I may say it is very sweet, it has a nice flavor. They may think they have understood, because these words they will try to relate with their available fund of experience. They may think, oh, mango is as sweet as molasses or as honey, or it has a fragrance like some rose or maybe some jasmine. So what they're doing, they're trying to relate these words with their available fund of experience, and that may give an impression that they have understood. But the day they really taste the mango, then they realize that what they were intellectually conceiving about the taste of mango has nothing to do with the real taste of mango. So in this world, unless the experience is shared by two of us, we can never relate our experience. It is impossible. So a man of realization is, after all, very rare. So when he tries to express his experience, it is almost impossible to express through words. And not only that, the experience of the ultimate conscious principle is like going beyond the mind. At present, we have the idea that all knowledge is through the mind. That without mind, there cannot be any knowledge. Even the idea that I exist, that also the mind is there to say that I exist. Is there any knowledge beyond the mind? So as we told in the West, that's the basic difference, a very basic difference between the Western philosophy and the Oriental way of thinking. In the Western philosophy, the father of Western philosophy, Descartes, what he says? That I think, therefore I am. So my amness is related to my thinking, thought. But in Vedanta, we say that you have to go beyond the mind to really experience what you are. The mind is actually inert. It becomes conscious by its association with the conscious principle, and once it becomes conscious by its association with the conscious principle, then it projects this universe of name and form. So it's just like the hard disk of the computer, that when it has been connected with the mains, with the supply, with the power, then the hard disk becomes activated. The keyboard of my laptop is just like the sensors through which the stimuli is coming, and the hard disk being activated by the bias voltage now creates the world of virtual reality as per the input I am providing to it. So that's the thing which we find. But if that bias voltage is not there, the hard disk is just like a dead log wood. It has no power to project the world of virtual reality which we experience in our computer. So similarly, the conscious principle, unless the mind is associated with that, the mind is as such like a dead log wood. It is inert. That we somehow confuse the mind to be consciousness. But Vedanta again and again asserts that mind is conscious because of its association with the consciousness. It's the example which we give like this, that a light is falling in a prism. The white light falls on the prism and it breaks into the spectrum of 7 colors. So this prism is just like the mind. The white light is like the consciousness. It's just an allegory. We shouldn't take it in literally, just to have an idea. Just the way the white light falls on the prism to break into the spectrum of colors. Similarly, the conscious principle coming in association with the mind breaks into the spectrum of this world of name and form. So what's the ultimate realization? The ultimate realization is like the prism being removed. The mind collapses, the prism has been removed. So what happens? 2 things. This spectrum, this is no more visible. Where it has gone? It has merged with the white light. Because of the mind, the white light was appearing as the spectrum of colors. Similarly, because of this mind, the conscious principle, when it comes in association with it, it projects into this world of name and form. When you go beyond the mind, it has all merged with the consciousness. So a man in samadhi, in that ultimate realization, actually has gone beyond the mind. The mind has as if collapsed, taking him to that realization, which is beyond the world of name and form. And now we will understand why it has been spoken of in the scriptures as the realization which is avang manasa gocharam. It is beyond mind, beyond our senses, beyond our speech. So when Sri Ramakrishna said, what he is saying? That everything else but Brahman has been polluted. Everything else, whatever I am experiencing, has been polluted by the mind and the senses. It is through the mind and the senses I see the thing. So everything has to be polluted by the mind and the sense, has to be tarnished by the mind and the sense to be experienced as the object as it is. We give that common example that you say that the world of name and form is not there, is a projection of the mind. Even in modern science, you will find it is being a proved fact that this we are hallucinating, the mind is hallucinating this universe. You will understand very, very easily by a common example that I see a red flower, I think the flower is red, but actually the flower has no color. Light is falling on that flower. All the wavelengths are absorbed by that flower, or in a particular wavelength of light is reflected. It is just a wavelength of light. It has no color. That particular wavelength of light strikes the retina of my eye. The function of light stops there. The light doesn't enter the brain. The light touches the retina. The moment it touches the retina, that particular wavelength of light produces a particular frequency of optical nerve current. The optical nerve carries that current. This wavelength of light has been converted into an optical nerve current. The moment it reaches the so-called color perception center, we are saying color perception, but actual color is not perceived. The ideas of all the colors are already there, hidden in the mind. When this particular wavelength of nerve current reaches and strikes the color center of all the colors, a particular color, that is stimulated. That is already hidden in the mind. That is projected through the senses to the external world. It is projected. It envelops the flower to give me a feeling that it is red. So now you will understand all the perceptions, whatever we are seeing, whatever we are hearing, whatever we are smelling, whatever we are tasting, and whatever we are touching is nothing but the projection of the mind. The mind is a wonderful projector. With all our modern technology, we have a projector with which in the movie theater we can project only light and sound, nothing else. But here we have a projector which is projecting these 5 senses, creating this world of virtual reality. What is there outside I can never know. Whenever I try to know the external world, immediately the mind comes in between to project all these various sensations. And that gives the impression of what it is. So it is nothing but the projection of the mind. External world is a mere stimuli that is creating this projection. About the external world, what I can say? That something exists. So that's what in Vedanta they say the ultimate reality is isness. Asti, it exists. But what it is, it can never be defined. Because whenever I'm trying to realize that isness, immediately the mind is coming in between and projecting various attributes. And those attributes actually is what I think the definition of the thing which I am perceiving. That defines it. So it's actually the projection of the mind. The external world, I can say it is. So that again is the difference between Buddhism and Vedanta. In Buddhism also they believe in this projection. But that projection they believe is what? They call it the subjective idealism. That it is just a mere projection of the mind. Nothing is there outside. But in Vedanta they say that this world is an existence. That something is existent. But I can never know that existence. Because the moment I want to know it, this mind is coming in between and it is projecting and giving me an idea that this world is such and such of name and form. But they are merely the projection of the mind. About the external world, what I can say? It is just isness. About myself, I can say it is amness. I am. And the external world is. Something is there. Vedanta says this isness and amness are not different. When you go beyond the mind, everything becomes a one undifferentiable whole. And that's the ultimate existence. And that is Brahman, which is beyond the mind, beyond the senses. It constitutes the entire reality. So now you will find very nicely that when Sri Ramakrishna is saying everything has been polluted, everything has been defiled. So when I take food, the food which I am tasting is defiled by my saliva. But here the defilement is not by that literal meaning of that getting defiled by saliva. What is the meaning here? It is getting defiled by the mind and the senses. But Brahman, which is beyond the mind and the senses, the mind can never reach there. So that's why it is never defiled. So hearing this word, Vidyasagar was really impressed. He is a Pandit, and he have never heard such words. So that's what he is saying. So it is said that there are places near Kedar that are covered with eternal snow. He who climbs too high cannot come back. Those who have tried to find out what there is in the higher regions or what one feels there have not come back to tell us about it. So this is the thing, going beyond the mind. How is it possible? There are so many religious traditions, there are so many meditational practices. Which one leads us to that ultimate reality? All of them. If we sincerely practice any, just holding on to any of the meditational process, it will take us ultimately to that realization. How? Now, what I am meditating upon is not important. How intensely I am meditating upon the thing which I thought to be my ultimate chosen ideal, how intensely I am doing, that is important. All the various concepts of the highest reality which we have, again, is just a notion. Just like the notion of the taste of mango of a person who have not tasted the mango. It's just a notion. But there is no harm to have that notion. There is no harm. That though it is not correct, still to have that notion is okay. It's a matter of programming. If I believe in that notion, particular concept, and meditate on it intensely, it can take me to that highest realization. We will find all the religious traditions, as per the belief system is concerned, the doctrines, dogmas, there is so much variation. But where all the religions meet, is there any point where all the religions meet? Sri Ramakrishna says nicely, if you want to find the common ground in all the religions, go to the life of the mystics. Those who have practiced the religion intensely and have went to that realization. For most of us, religion is just a belief. It hasn't given us any realization. What the scripture says, I believe. All our fight is because of that belief. But if it has taken me to some realization, there I will find all the mystics are speaking in the same language. In the words of Ramakrishna, Shekhane shop sheale rakra. All the fox howls in the same manner when they reach there. What they speak of? They speak of some unitary experience. That this amness which I feel at present is being restricted by this body-mind complex. When I go to that realization, I find that this body-mind complex I am no more aware of. I am still aware of that amness, but it has lost its locality. I don't know where I am. I am just am. But I will find that I have lost the sense of locality. The world as if merges. The entire world merges in that amness. The world of name and form is not there. I still exist, but that existence as such has no locality. It has gone beyond time, space, causation. To understand this idea of amness going beyond time, space, causation, let us give an example. It's just an example. You will have an idea. That suppose on a weekend, after your lunch, after the lunch, I have a siesta. Because today it's not a working day, after the lunch I have a nice siesta. It's not the usual hour for me to sleep. So it happens, sometimes we'll find when we wake up, that's not the time for brushing my teeth. Suddenly I will find myself, I have gone to near my sink, I have applied the paste on the brush and I have started brushing, and then suddenly I realize, oh, it's just the afternoon. I had the siesta and then I woke up feeling that as every day, it's when I wake up, I brush, it's in the morning. But today it's in the unusual hours I have slept, I woke up and brushing. What has happened? When I woke up, I am aware of my amness. But that amness is in no way related to the time, space, causation. Where, at which time I am existing, Where suppose if you change the direction of your bed, you will find every day you get up from the left side, the right side is the wall. Now you place your bed in such a way that the left side is the wall. You have to get out from the right. The moment you get up, as per your habit, you will find you will go and clash with the wall. Why? Because that's your natural direction in which you get up. So when you got up, that you're aware of your amness, but immediately where you are, at what time you are, those things just fall off from your mind. You are not at all aware of the time, space, causation. So that's the idea of transcendence. This is just to have an idea that what it feels like. So your amness is there, and that as if has entire existence has merged in it, and that amness is something non-local. And that's the thing which Sri Ramakrishna is speaking of. When you go to that, how you go to that? As we were speaking of. In all the religious tradition, we will find the mystic speaks of going to such state of realization. How it happens. In a simple way, let us try to understand that in all types of meditations, whatever we are meditating upon, we all believe in focusing. The mind is distracted, we try to bring it at one point. Whatever may be the tradition, at last this is the thing, that all the distractions should fall off and have to bring the mind in one point. So in Yoga Shastra, in Patanjali Yoga, they speak of sarvarthata ekagrata, that all the distractions falls off and I'm trying to bring the mind at one point. But it is not easy. Whatever may be my object of meditation, I will find that my mind the subconscious mind is full of distractions. However, consciously I try to keep the mind in one thought. My subconscious mind, the distractions, they pop up and they break my concentration. If I somehow am able to keep the mind concentrated for maybe 5 minutes, these distractions from the subconscious mind comes and breaks my one-pointedness. Now, what's the way to get rid of the distractions? The only way is, in spite of the distractions, again and again, try to keep your mind focused in that one thought. How it will help? Now, all these distractions, how they have went to the subconscious mind? The only way to enter the subconscious is the conscious mind. That whatever is there in my subconscious mind, at some point of time, maybe in this life, maybe in past life, I have thought them consciously. I have done them repeatedly, consciously, again and again. Those conscious thoughts through my conscious mind has went to the subconscious mind. Anything which is in the subconscious must have been repeatedly thought of consciously at some point of time in the past, then only it has went to the subconscious. So this is the clue, that the way to the subconscious is the conscious mind. So they have all entered. All these distractions in my subconscious mind must have been thought of consciously at certain point of time in this life or in some past lives. So what's the way out? Now this conscious thought of one-pointedness, ekagrata, is very weak compared to this power of the subconscious mind. It's very weak. But I shouldn't get disheartened. Each and every time I fail, again I try. What happens then? Now this conscious thought, with each and every attempt, though I am failing, with each and every attempt, it is also entering into the subconscious mind. Now the more this ekagra, with this conscious thought goes and starts saturating the subconscious mind, all the distractions, they start getting washed off, purged out. That example which we give, suppose a cup is full of impure water, a lot of impurities are there, and it is full to the brim. It is like the present state of the mind. The mind with all the impurities, it is there. Now meditation is like pouring pure water in that cup, which is already filled with that impure water. Now as I pour pure water, ekagra vritti, that one thought, what happens? As the cup was already filled with impure water, it starts spilling off. And the more it spills off, the more the impurities get washed off. A time comes when all the impurities has been washed off, now the cup is full of pure water. So the more I try, what will I find? Gradually all the distractions slowly starts falling off. So that's why that patience, perseverance is very important. Go on practicing, go on practicing. And the more I practice, I will find the more and more my mind is getting concentrated. A time will come when this concentrated state becomes the habitual state of my existence, because all the distractions has been washed off. But that is not all. After that, there is another state. So now also in that ekagra vritti, your mind still exists. Previously the mind was existing with thousands of thoughts. Now the mind is existing with that one thought. But when that one thought becomes really intense, the mind, now what happens to that mind? As we say in this world, wherever you see a flow, everything is flowing. In this world, everything is moving. Nothing is in a static condition. Everything is moving. Everything is in a flow. Why everything is in a flow? Because there is polarity. Why water flows? Because there is a difference of level. If both the levels are same, the water flow will stop. Why electricity flows? Because there is difference of potential. If both the ends have same potential, no electricity. Magnetism, same thing. All the world, any forces, it's only there is the polarity, you find there is the flow. Otherwise the flow stops. So here also, why the mind was active, why the mind was mind? Because the mind sustains on thoughts. Very interesting, in Sanskrit, the word thought is called vritti. Vritti actually means profession, it doesn't mean thought. Then why the thought has been called vritti? Because you will find in our day-to-day life, my profession sustains me. If I am a doctor, by being a doctor, I sustain myself. If I am an engineer, by being an engineer, I earn by being an engineer. Whatever is your profession, that is the way to sustain. If you are a businessman, by doing that business, you are sustaining. So my vritti is a doctor, my vritti is an engineer, that which sustains me. So let's see how scientifically these terms were coined. The vritti means profession. Then why the thought has been called vritti? Chitta vritti? Because chitta doesn't exist if that vritti is not there. Chitta's profession is that vritti. So if you can stop that vritti, how can you stop? Now when the mind has only one thought, previously it was thinking A, B, C, D. Now you're thinking A. And that also so intensely without any gap. Your meditation has become very intense. You have resolved the polarity. The mind can only exist when it is jumping from one thought to another. Now it is the same thought. So what happens? The mind gets arrested. When you really can think intensely one thought, the mind will collapse, taking you to that non-dual realization of I-amness, in which all the religious tradition, you will find there's a reference to it. The mystic speaks of it. There's all speaking in that unitary experience. We find that in all the traditions. But that is not again the ultimate. Now here when you go to that realization, now very interesting. My mind previously was saturated, subconscious mind was saturated with distracted thoughts. But now when I go to that arrested state, my subconscious mind is saturated with ekavritti, that the thought with the help of which I went to that state. It is full of that. Now this one thought pops up again to break the arrested state. So, but there are some spiritual practitioners who doesn't stop just by going to that realization of oneness for once. What they do? They want to stay in that state. So now they will again and again try to go to that arrested state. So what will happen? The sanskara, the impression of this arrested state will now start saturating your subconscious mind. Washing off that thought of one-pointedness. A time will come where all the vrittis related to that ekavritti is washed off. Your mind goes to the state of arrested state once for all, never to come back. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna is indicating here. It is said that there are places near Kedar that are covered with eternal snow. He who climbs too high, let's see, this word too high is important, Many like to stay in the state where they go to that state of realization, comes back. For them also they are liberated. Why they are liberated? Because their mind now has that one pointedness, which can never go back again to the distractions. So nothing is there to bring him down to this world of sunset pleasures. Nothing is there. So they are also liberated, but still they are maintaining a distinction between you and me. That there is something called absolute reality. When I meditate, I merge in it. Otherwise, I am just contemplating on it and enjoying the bliss of meditation, because all the distractions has fallen off. The mind is calm, only in that one thought. Many like to stay in that state. But those who want to go too high, there are few who are not satisfied with that. They want to go too high. So for them, they cannot come back. It is just like, the mind is just like an elastic. Anything which is elastic, what happens if you stretch it with some weight? You will find when you remove the weight, that it again goes back to its original shape. But there is something called elastic limit. If the weight is is bigger than the elastic limit, then what happens? That elastic will snap. There is no question of again going back to its original shape. So similarly, this one thought also has a particular, this elastic limit. When you go on to that again and again to that restricted state, a time comes when the mind loses the capacity to go back to that one thought, because it has been washed off, and then it merges with the absolute. So Sri Ramakrishna is speaking of that state, so that when he comes too high, he cannot come back. Those who have tried to find out what there is in the higher regions, or what one feels there, have not come back to tell us about it. As Sri Ramakrishna says, such a person, in 21 days, his body falls off, when he has gone to that state of nirvija nirvikalpa samadhi. These words are very important. Nirvikalpa, where all the projections of the mind, kalpa is the projections of the mind, that has vanished. That is nirvikalpa samadhi. But still the seed is there, because that one thought in the subconscious mind is there, still there. So the vija, the seed is still there. But a time comes when the seed has also been washed off. Then it becomes nirvija nirvikalpa samadhi. In that state, there is no question of coming back. So there, the body falls off, never to reincarnate again. So he has merged with the absolute. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna is speaking of. After having the vision of God, man is overpowered with bliss. He becomes silent. Who will speak? Who will explain? So this is the thing, again Sri Ramakrishna is indicating, that once you have experienced, if you have gone to that ekagra vritti, now that itself speaks of your ultimate, your liberation. Why? Because your distractions has fallen off. Either you are absorbed in the contemplation of the divine, or you have gone even to the state of thoughtlessness. So there is no question of coming to this world of sunset pleasure and relating to that world of name and form. So that's why they are saying, after having the vision of God, that man is overpowered with that bliss. Either he is in communion with the divine, or he has gone to that state of that total thoughtlessness. So that's even in the life of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu we find that he's again and again, as if like a pendulum, going from this state of Bahya Dasha. He's just now singing and devotional songs with the devotees. Then he goes to a state of absorption, and then he's totally oblivious of the surrounding. But again, holding on to that ekavritti, someone chants the name of the Lord, he's again coming down. As we told, as his mind, he has not washed off all the vrittis. So with the help of that Ishta vritti, his mind is coming down. And that's why he is to say that there are some devotees who have that choice. They don't want to merge in the absolute. They want to enjoy the bliss of communion. So that's why he is to say very nicely, I don't want to become sugar. I want to enjoy the taste of sugar. So that ultimate oneness is just like becoming sugar. But I want to maintain the difference and enjoy the bliss of sugar. But those both are a liberation. Either you're enjoying the bliss, or you have even gone beyond that bliss. Both are liberation. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna is saying here, that once you have the vision of God, man is overpowered with bliss. And then he is giving a nice allegory. The king lives beyond 7 gates. At each gate sits a man endowed with great power and glory. At each gate the visitor asks, "Is this the king?" The gatekeeper answers, "No, not this, not this." The visitor passes through the 7th gate and becomes overpowered with joy. He is speechless. This time he doesn't have to ask, "Is this the king?" The mere sight of him removes all doubts. So this is an allegory which explains the various phases of your spiritual illumination. First comes samadhi matram. For the first time, I am able to stop the distractions. The mind can hold on to that one thought, and it gives immense bliss. Why I get that bliss? Tremendous bliss. When your mind for the first time has got rid of all the distractions and it is holding on to one thought. In Buddhism, they don't meditate on particular object, but still it holds on to one thought. What is that one thought? It may be just he's aware of his breath. That also is one thought. He's aware of his breath, nothing else. Or he's just aware of his amness, nothing else. So still he's holding on to that one thought. And it gives a tremendous bliss. From where that bliss comes? Because we don't realize, we have got so much habituated in carrying the baggage. You know that if you are carrying a baggage for a long time, suppose you are climbing the mountain, you are having the backpack, and as you are having it for a long time, you don't realize you have a weight. And now you sit down, you keep the bag down, and then suddenly you feel the difference. A let go ensues. Oh, such a relaxation. I was holding this weight with me for such a long time. It has become as if something like an habit. I was not even aware that I'm carrying the weight, but immediately I understand the difference when I keep it down. A let go ensues. The same thing happens when you go to that samadhi matram. For the first time, your mind is holding just in that one thought. All the distractions has fallen off. What has happened? That you are carrying this backpack of your thoughts, worries, tensions. For the first time, you have kept it down. A tremendous let go ensues. That's the bliss which you enjoy for the first time. And this becomes the motivation. With this motivation, first, you may get stuck there. That's what he's saying. Is this the king? No. You have to go still for further. The one who has got that bliss, and if he stops his journey there, he will never see the king. So no, you have to proceed further. Then what happens? So though for the first time I may get that concentration, it happens with many of us. That I'm meditating for years together, nothing happens, and suddenly one day I feel tremendous joy. It's a type of samadhi matram. The mind became focused. But very interesting thing you will find, you think, oh, I have got it. So from tomorrow, whenever I sit for meditation, now this is the thing I have achieved, I will get. And you find again the same thing. That you got the joy, and again you find the mind is again in its old way. It's not again getting that peaceful, that this bliss again. You know why it happens? Very interesting. That the mind, that let go ensues when you have no expectation. No expectation. What does the no expectation means? Shankaracharya very nicely in one place in his commentary says very nice. That Ishwaropi tushyatu iti sangam tyaktva. That when I am meditating, if I am a believer in God, I think, may God be pleased with me so that my mind becomes concentrated. I get focused, I think of Him. So I think the God should be pleased. So Bhagavad Pada Shankaracharya is saying a very interesting thing. He is saying, Ishwaropi tushyatu. That even God be pleased, this attachment also has fallen off. What it actually means. Actually, it is our expectations. It is something like holding onto the branch of a tree. Suppose you have climbed up a tree. And you are holding onto the branch. Now to fall from the tree, no effort is required. No effort is required to fall from the tree. You just leave the hold, gravitation will pull you down. No effort is required. So in spiritual life, what happens? that we are in the tree of this life. Some branch is infested with the insects in which I am, they're disturbing. So somehow I leave the hold of that branch and catch hold of another branch, which I say spirituality. Still I am holding. I have released the hold of this branch and immediately caught hold of the another branch. So I am still on the tree, I am not falling. To fall, I just have to release the hold. So what happens when I am meditating for years together with the expectation, I will go to that realization. This expectation is something like clinging. It doesn't allow me to go to that realization. One day, because of my habit, I am just meditating, but somehow, so long I have expected, the expectation somehow has fallen off. Just habitually I am meditating, and it takes you to that type of wonderful bliss. For the first time, the expectation, the clinging has fallen off. Immediately it takes you to that state of bliss. The next day it has gone. Why? The moment you go to the bliss, again that strong expectation comes. I have to get that bliss. I have to get that bliss. And that again you lose because that expectation has came back. That's why in Bhagavad Gita, at last what they say? Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam braja. After speaking of Jnana Yoga, Raja Yoga, all the yogas, various ways to concentrate the mind, to be focused on the divine, at last he's saying, leave them off, all. Take refuge in me. What's the idea? It's just like leaving the hold. The way to fall, I have to leave the hold, I automatically fall to the ground. Similarly, the plan of the universe is such, if I leave the clinging, I will, by the grace is bound to work on me. The plan of the universe is that grace, which will pull me up to my spiritual identity. It will take me to that spiritual identity. The moment it happens. So it's not an easy process. So you'll find, though you get the samadhi matram for the first time, again you find that you are not getting that concentration. With lot of practice, again that let go ensues, and this let go starts becoming habitual, and then your mind remains in that one thought. Then what has happened? Then that has become this nirvija savikalpa samadhi. All the distractions in the form of expectations has fallen off. This state of habitual has become habitual. You remain in that one thought. Again, that is also not the ultimate realization. That gives a tremendous bliss. Though you are in the body, you don't feel the body. Just like a painter, a classical musician, maybe throughout the night he is singing. He has entered into a state of flow. His mind is so focused that this bodily feelings is not registered by the mind. Because the total mind is focused in something else. The other feelings are not registered by the mind. So he doesn't feel the sleep, tiredness, hunger, thirst. Nothing is felt because the mind is not registering them. And that helps him to stay in a state of flow for a long time. Here also the same thing happens. As all the distractions has fallen off, you remain in that state. But that again is not ultimate. So that's why, is this the king? No. This one state should take you to that state of arrested mode. For the first time you go that, you realize that, and then the world appears as an hallucination. You feel, I have realized the ultimate reality. Yes, you have realized, but you're still not established in it. It is what that state is like. For the first time you have went to the state of that nirvikalpa samadhi. In the words of Swami Vivekananda, for the first time when you go that, what happens? It's just like he's saying that his own experience, that as a wandering monk, I was traveling through the deserts and I was thirsty. Suddenly, in search of water, I was just moving hither and thither, and suddenly I saw a huge reservoir. Seeing the reservoir, I started proceeding towards it, and suddenly I found it vanished. It's not there. And then the idea came. Oh, it was a mirage. From childhood, I have heard about it. I have learnt it in my textbook. Intellectually, I have an idea what mirage is. But I have never realized what it is. For the first time, I realized what the mirage is. And then what happens? The next day, again, I am walking down the desert. Again, I am thirsty. Again, I see that reservoir. As I am in my mind and senses, again I see. But there is a big difference. What's the difference? Yesterday, that reservoir dragged me. In search of water, I was dragged by that reservoir. Today I know it is something virtual. It has lost the power to drag me. So the one who has entered into the state of Savija Nirvikalpa Samadhi, even once he has gone to that Nirvikalpa Samadhi, he always experiences this world is after all something like a virtual reality. It is not something a tangible reality. So naturally, if you cannot love a picture, so you cannot love something which is virtual. So they are all our attachment to the things which I thought real, that falls off naturally. It's a spontaneous renunciation. You don't have means renunciation is something which it is not you renounce. Renunciation comes spontaneously. They fall off because they know it says no. It is total virtual. But that also is not. Is this state the king? No. Beyond that also there is a state. What's that state? That when your all this ekavritti has been washed off by again and again going to that arrested state, then you merge in the absolute. Then you are beyond mind. There is no need for anyone to say who is the king, because you are already one with it. Before that there was someone who was saying, no, this is not the king. The mind was still there. Now the mind is not there. You have become one with it. So where is the king? Who is there to say that this is not the king? You are now have reached that state. So you have gone beyond. So just see this allegories of Sri Ramakrishna. This gospel is so simple. These words are so simple. Sometimes we read it, we feel, oh, it's all we can understand. But it's really that with the background of the scriptures, when you study, its meaning becomes more deep, more revealing. So layers of understandings are there. So now just read this allegory, what he's saying, you'll find so wonderful thing. He's speaking of the various steps of our realization. They are milestones, they are not the ultimate. So the ultimate realization till you go, they are not the king. One by one you have to cross all the states to at last go to the final state where you are one with the king. So the king lives beyond 7 gates. At each gate sits a man endowed with great power and glory. At each state the visitor asks, is this the king? The gatekeeper answers, no, not this, not this. The visitor passes through the 7th gate and becomes overpowered with joy. He is speechless. This time he doesn't have to ask, is this the king? The mere sight of him removes all doubts. Preacher, yes sir, it is so described in Vedanta. Master, when the Godhead is thought of as creating, preserving and destroying, it is known as the personal God, Saguna Brahman, or the primal energy, Adya Shakti. Again, when it is thought of as beyond the 3 gunas, then it is called the attributeless reality, Nirguna Brahman, beyond speech and thought. This is the supreme Brahman, Parabrahman. So as long as I'm in the mind and senses, with that, the idea of the divinity which I have is the God. So in the words of Swami Vivekananda, the God is the highest reading of the absolute. Highest reading. Reading with the mind and the senses. With the mind and senses, when I try to think of the highest reality, at last we conceive of something, idea of God. That He has created, He is preserving the universe, as we find in all the dualistic religion. And in Him the entire creation again merges. So this idea of divinity, this highest ideal, is what you will find. With the mind, you are thinking of something which is beyond all the limits which we have. That when I think of myself, I find what? I was born at a certain point of time, I am going to die at a certain point of time. This is the limit. So I can think of that limitlessness. God is there, eternal. As I was born at a certain point of time, the entire creation has taken birth at a certain point of time. From where it came? From that eternal existence, who is always there. From that it has been projected. In it it rests. In it it dissolves. So you will find that as long as I am in the mind, with the sense of all the limitations, that the opposite pole is all the sense of unlimitedness. But this is again the reading of the mind. And that gives the idea of God. But the ultimate reality is beyond this idea. It is something to go beyond the mind. Swami Vivekananda gives this a very nice example to understand this idea of the distinction between Brahman, God, and an individual soul. What's the distinction? for the first time when he visited the Niagara Falls in States. Now, if you visit the Niagara Falls, you will find there's a rainbow constantly visible. Throughout the day, you can see that rainbow. And nowadays, because of pollution at night, it is not seen. In previous days, even in a moonlit night, even with the moon, there used to be the rainbow was visible even on the moonlit night. So it is always there in the sky. Seeing that, Swamiji immediately created a very nice allegory. What he said? The sun is the ultimate reality, the Brahman. This Niagara Falls is this world, this creation, where everything is changing like the flow, everything is flowing. And this rainbow is the God. When the sun falls on this, the rays falls on this something which is constantly flowing, constantly changing, it's reflected back as the rainbow. It's refracted back as the rainbow, which again appears to be something unchanging. Something unchanging is reflected on the change to give a reflection of something which is unchanging. That rainbow is like the God, reading of the absolute through this mind. Our mind is also a flow. Through that, you're reading the absolute. Very interesting. If the Niagara Fall dries up, will the rainbow be there? No, it won't be there. Will the sun be there? The sun is still there. So, when our mind is not there to read the absolute, the highest absolute, God is not there. If I am not there, God is not there. But the Brahman, it is still there. So this God is the highest reading of the absolute through the human mind, through our mind. So when the Niagara Falls is not there, the rainbow is not there. But the sun is still there. And as long as the Niagara Falls is there, it is a constant flow, but this rainbow is something which is changeless. The sun is also changeless. Something changeless, permanent, is being reflected on something which is always changing to give an impression of again something which is changeless. So this rainbow is like the idea of God. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna is here indicating. When the Godhead is thought of as a creating, preserving and destroying, it is known as the personal God, Saguna Brahman, or the primal energy, the Adya Shakti. Again, when it is thought of as beyond the three gunas, when it is beyond the mind, then what happens? Then it is that supreme Brahman, Parabrahman, the absolute. So you have removed as long as the prism is there, the white light is breaking into the spectrum of the 7 colors. That's also like rainbow. Remove the prism, the spectrum has vanished. Only the white light is there. So that's the idea, that as long as you're trying to relate to that absolute reality through the mind and the senses, at the most you can end up with a God with attributes. You cannot go beyond that. But when you go beyond the gunas, when you go beyond all this, the mind, the 3 gunas, this mind is nothing but is constituted of the 3 gunas. Again, in the next class, the context will come where we will try to understand how this mind is constituted with these 3 gunas. This mind is nothing but the 3 gunas. When these 3 gunas falls off, the mind fall off, what remains is that absolute. That's what Sri Ramakrishna is saying. So you will find what he's speaking is of his pure Vedanta in a so simple word that sometimes we feel we have understood. But actually it is speaking of very, very profound thought, that the beauty of the gospel is there. Everyone thinks we have understood. No one thinks that I haven't understood. At whatever level I am, accordingly I understand. It never happens that I just keep the book aside, it is not comprehensible. It's always comprehensible. That's the beauty. In such a simple word he has said. But the more you go on reading, the more the layers of your understanding goes on revealing as you evolve spiritually, and as far your thought process becomes more and more refined. So we will continue with the discussion as per this Ramakrishna's conversion again in the next class. So with this, we stop our discussion today. Thank you all. Namaskar.